All right, let's go to this next story.
Now, this next story, it's so important, but we can't show it on Tesla Time News because it is...
it's a BBC story.
Right, and we would get demonetized if we put it on Tesla Time News, but we do want it to be shared, so we're going to be mentioning this on the main show, but it will be on the Clips channel, so you can share it with anyone you want because it is arguably so important. So let's get into it.
Last month, in a European capital, Unearthed, Greenpeace UK's investigations unit, is making the final preparations, wiring up with covert recording devices. On K Street, Washington, D.C., home of America's most powerful lobbyists, Keith McCoy, a key representative of the biggest oil company in America, is waiting for the call. The timing's vital. What may be America's greatest chance to combat the climate crisis is going through Congress right now. The video connection is set up. It's time to go to work.
Hi, good to see you.
How are you?
Moments later, Mr. McCoy will become one of the first ever executives to claim that ExxonMobil has aggressively fought climate science using front organizations to maximize shareholder profit.
Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes. Did we join some of these shadow groups to work against some of the early efforts? Yes, that's true. But there's nothing illegal about that. We were looking out for our investments. We were looking out for our shareholders.
In response, Exxon said, "We've supported climate science for decades," and accused Greenpeace of waging a multi-decade campaign against them and the industry. Keith McCoy thinks he's being headhunted for a new job. In fact, of course, he's being covertly filmed. So tonight, a man boasting at a job interview, or a never-seen-before look at how big oil tries to manipulate big power, or both? First, the targets. Congressmen are fish. Exxon is the fisherman.
When you have an opportunity to talk to a member of Congress, I liken it to fishing, right? You have bait, you throw that bait out. It's all these opportunities that you use, and to use the fishing analogy again, just to kind of reel them in, because they're a captive audience. They know they need you, and I need them.
Senators pressed to do Exxon's bidding behind closed doors.
You want to be able to go to the chief, and so the chief knows you, that you can go to the chief and say, look, we've got this issue. We need Congressman so-and-so to be able to either introduce this bill. We need him to make a floor statement. We need him to send a letter. You name it. We've asked for everything.
So who are the fish?
I'm Joe Manchin. I approve this act because
The biggest catch, according to Mr. Coy, it's the conservative Democrat Senator Joe Manchin, who famously shot President Obama's cap-and-trade climate bill.
And I'll take dead aim at the cap-and-trade bill.
Joe Manchin, I talk to his office every week. He is the kingmaker, and he's not shy about sort of staking his claim early and completely changing the debate.
Legal declarations show that Senator Manchin has received tens of thousands of dollars from ExxonMobil and its trade associations. Keith McCoy names 10 other senators as crucial to ExxonMobil. Senators Mark Kelly, Chris Coons, Shelley Moore Capito, Kirsten Sinema, John Tester, Maggie Hassan, John Barrasso, Steve Daines, John Cornyn, and Marco Rubio. All bar Kelly and Hassan have taken money from Exxon totaling $117,000. We gave all these senators a chance to respond. None did so. Exxon insists our lobbying efforts are fully compliant with all laws and are publicly disclosed on a quarterly basis. Nonetheless, a degree of secrecy appears to be key. The last thing Exxon seems to want is open accountability, facing Congress in public.
We don't want it to be us to have these conversations, especially in a hearing. It's getting our associations to step in and have those conversations and answer those tough questions and be the for lack of a better term, the whipping boy for some of these members of Congress.
So he says they hide behind trade bodies to avoid public scrutiny on the Hill.
Our CEO was invited to a hearing from a member of Congress who we know is just going to rip him to shreds when he goes there. The main thing that they're looking at is just to get ExxonMobil in front of a congressional hearing so they can rip us apart.
Big oil, big power, big pressure. The route from the K Street lobbyist offices to Capitol Hill is very well trodden. From the street to the Hill, we can now reveal the current ExxonMobil battleground and strategy.
It's big, yes. It's bold, yes. And we can get it done.
Just last week, as America continues to suffer heat waves described as apocalyptic and linked to the current climate crisis, President Biden fought to get Congress to pass his $2 trillion showpiece law, linking jobs and infrastructure to massive spending to combat climate change. On Capitol Hill, though, Exxon was also fighting to strip out spending on climate. Forget that, it lobbied. Stick to roads and bridges.
So that's a completely different conversation. When you start to stick to roads and bridges, and instead of a $2 trillion bill, it's an $800 billion bill. If you lower that threshold, you stick to highways and bridges, then a lot of the negative stuff starts to come out. Why would you put in something on emissions reductions on climate change to oil refineries in a highway bill? So, and people say, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Then you get to the germaneness and say that shouldn't be in this bill.
Sure enough, last week Biden's behemoth bill evaporated. A new law may be agreed, but major green initiatives are gone. Coincidence? Or the big oil effect? Nothing illegal, just oiling the wheels of power. Exxon said our discussions on the bill are not accurately portrayed. Our lobbying efforts are related to a tax burden that could disadvantage US businesses.
Plans capture CO2.
Recent academic studies show what Keith McCoy alleges is the wider Exxon strategy. Say one thing in public, do another in private. For example, it says publicly it supports a carbon tax. Keith McCoy says privately that's just PR.
Nobody is going to propose a tax on all Americans. And the cynical side of me says, yeah, we kind of know that. But it gives us a talking point that we can say, well, what is ExxonMobil for? Well, we're for a carbon tax.
And why? Because they're confident it'll never happen in America.
No, it's not going to. A carbon tax isn't going to happen. And the bottom line is it's going to take political courage, political will, in order to get something done. And that doesn't exist in politics. It just doesn't.
Exxon told us for more than a decade it's supported an economy-wide price on CO2 emissions.
We're working on ways to provide energy while addressing the risks of climate change.
Take electric cars. It's all about doubt and delay.
You're not going to be able to just switch to battery-operated vehicles or wind for your electricity, and just having that conversation around why that's not possible in the next 10 years is critically important to the work that we do.
But science is screaming at us that we do not have 10 years. Delay, doubt, deflect, the classic hallmarks of modern-day climate crisis denial. And ExxonMobil's alleged involvement in that is thus revealed from the inside tonight, straight from the horse's mouth.
All right, so if you missed that, that was America's biggest oil company, ExxonMobil's top Washington lobbyist, admitting that ExxonMobil has fought climate science and said they support carbon tax publicly, but privately they lobby against it. And they also don't want stricter emission standards. I mean, come on. Who wants that?
So, I mean, this, if you have a brain and you've been alive for any length of time, should be something that you already knew was happening.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot on the show, but this is an undercover that actually he thought he was applying for a job, right? So you're going to put your best foot forward, and when asked questions about stuff, he said the truth. So this is Keith McCoy. He's the senior director for federal relations at ExxonMobil. He's basically a lobbyist. He's on K Street. He's a big lobbyist. He admitted he talks to Congress people and senators all the time. Some quotes here that you might have missed. Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes. Did we hide our science? Absolutely not. Did we join some of these shadow groups to work against some of the early efforts? Yes, that's true. But there's nothing illegal about that. You know, we were looking out for our investments. We were looking out for our shareholders. Carbon tax isn't going to happen. The bottom line is it's going to take political courage and political will in order to get something done. And that doesn't exist in politics. It just doesn't. Nobody is going to propose a tax on all Americans. The cynical side of me says we kind of know that, but it gives us a talking point. We can say, what is ExxonMobil for? We're for a carbon tax.
And so just in case, you know, and I know that a lot of people who watch this channel have a lot of people around them, whether that's your family or your friends or your coworkers or just random people on the street that you might happen to bump into and talk to. This doesn't really get mentioned. This idea that ExxonMobil and basically every oil company on earth is what's the word for it?
I think it's called
fucking evil. You know, when it's kind of pulled out in this context that they did it here, I mean, they're expecting you to kind of have the background on like, oh, climate change could be pretty catastrophic for, you know, civilization, and like even if you don't necessarily care about climate change, if you care about, you know, smartphones and computer games, and it's something you should be worried about, because if society collapses, those things going to go away. So listening to this evil man telling basically just straight up, oh yeah, we're evil, we do a bunch of evil stuff, and we lie about how
it's
evil
not
we're
illegal.
Doing. Not technically illegal, but it is unethical. It is, I would say, well outside of the realm of unethical. It's freaking downright evil.
And I want you to keep in mind, he's not saying this to a reporter. He doesn't know that he's being recorded by an actual reporter. He thinks he's talking to an insider for another lobbying firm.
Here's the thing that bugs me. This story doesn't blow the lid off of anything, because everyone with a brain knew that it was happening. But what I want you to do is share this clip with your friends. Share this clip with the people who, you know, have said like, well, they're not actually that evil. They're not, you know, they just want to sell energy. They've made the world better, because without energy, there wouldn't be the people.
Well, you know, a few years ago when ExxonMobil said like, we're for a carbon tax, I was like,
yeah, really?
Their whole play is they're like, Americans wouldn't be stupid enough to vote a tax on themselves, so we'll just say yes, and it makes us look good, and it's greenwashing. Right. And this is the greenwashing we talk about on the show all the time, where you're like, well, this company said a really nice thing. They're never gonna do it.
Right. And
when push comes to shove, another thing I just want to mention, if it gets close to passing a carbon tax, guess what ExxonMobil's going to do? They're going to do what they just did with this most recent bill. They're going to lobby behind the scenes to make sure it doesn't pass.
Right. And the thing that really bugs me, and the BBC did a really good job of reporting it, is they looked at like, I don't know, it was like 6 or 7 senators.
Right.
And then they're like, and the payments totaled $100-something thousand.
Right.
That's it. That's what our world is getting sold out on, is a couple $100,000. Not a couple. I'm sorry, less than $100,000 for like one bill.
But you know why?
That's cheap.
Yeah, but you know why?
Why?
Are you paying your senator that?
No.
There you go.
But
you can't compete.
Wait a minute. Okay. Let me just ask a stupid question.
Well, first of all, that's just what ExxonMobil. I'm sure there's super PACs.
Sure.
I'm sure that there's a whole bunch of other money that flows from that. That's just the tip of the iceberg.
Let me just ask a stupid question. Mm-hmm. Is it that senators don't get paid enough money?
No, it's just for their reelection. Okay, so the minute you get elected to be a congressperson or senator, guess where you go? Into the bunker.
What?
Nope. You go into your bunker with your group that is just working on the next election. Now, Congress people, it's every 2 years in the United States. So the second you get into office, you are focused on raising money for your next run. Senators,
wait. Why are you raising money? Why aren't you walking around kissing babies and shaking hands?
Okay.
Why aren't you going talking to your constituents?
because they're not going to hand you money. They're going to hand you babies to kiss.
But I mean, they're the ones who are going to vote you in, right?
Yeah, but they're going to be influenced by the ads that you're going to run and by the money that you're going to pay to get different groups to show up to vote.
But I'm just saying, like, okay, so let's just go back in time to, 1778. I mean, very apropos since it's,
Okay.
4th of July just happened. So, I mean, they made the thing, and there's 2 senators per state. What were they doing? Like back in, what were they doing?
They were probably doing more of their work. Well, first of all, most of them were part-time. So they were probably going back to their farms for a lot of the year,
Sure.
going to Congress for a couple months, working on some bills, going back home.
What changed? What?
Television.
Is it television then? Or is it because they have 1,000 times more constituents than they used to?
Well, they had to have a way to communicate to their constituents, but basically what politicians learned was that as soon as your opponent spends more money than you, they get elected almost always. If you look at almost every election and you look at, just take the names out, right? Redact them, put how much money was paid, almost always the one with the most money wins. So ipso facto, you start raising as much money as you possibly can. Now, is it true? Probably not. If you were a great senator or a great congressperson, you're probably right. If you were out there doing what your constituents wanted, you probably would get reelected. But they think that you have to get the money, the ads, the machine working on your favor. And I mean, I've run for office on a statewide level, and I know that that's true. If you don't have the machinery, it took me months to get on the ballot. It took my opponent 2 days. He had machinery. He didn't have to go out and get a signature. I had to stand on the street corner for months in the cold. That's just that's the difference. So money makes a huge difference. It's sad. And we could solve this problem, by the way. We could get money out of politics with like a 2-line law that would just say no money allowed in politics, and we'd be off and running, because then they'd go, oh, well, wait a minute. So corporation, you're no more valuable than Jesse is. So I'm just going to go talk to Jesse. But instead, the corporations and the PACs can give them money. So that's who they talk to, and that's who they listen to. And that's where we're at.
And I just, so, I mean, the thing that bugs me, right? The senators, they see the ads from ExxonMobil that say, we're all for a carbon tax. And then the lobbyists come into their office and they go, we don't want a carbon tax.
Oh, yeah. No, I hear what you're saying.
Wouldn't you just be like, well, I just was, hey, it's funny. Jane, go turn on the TV for me real quick. Hey, what's that say? Bucko?
You'd have to be one of the few actual stand-up people in Congress, and there's not a lot of them. Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching Now You Know Clips.
You can watch full episodes of Tesla Time News on Mondays and in-depths on Fridays. Just click the link down below to head over to the Now You Know channel.